Lesson 2 begins with the same sheet that we were working with before. Here we've got the Griswold sheet, and it's organized in the sort from the end of the first part of the exercise. We have it from Griswold going down to the Supreme Court level, down to the U.S. Court of Appeals, and eventually to the U.S. District Courts. Everything looks to be clean. And if we check this, we've got our kind of numeric and string coding, we've got our variable labels in here, and things look good. So now we're ready to create our dependent variable. And so what we have to do here is we have two bits of information, but they're not currently coded in such a way that we can explain what the judge did, because we have the first one, which is the progeny action, right? And that is either whether the progeny distinguished or followed the landmark. And we have a second variable out here, the judge's opinion position, which the judge may agree or disagree with distinguishing or following. So we can't use just one of these variables. We have to combine them into a single variable. And in this case, we're going to do a six-part ordinal category that we're going to call respect for precedent. To do this, we're going to use this variable up here, the transform variable, and we're going to compute it. So let's begin by selecting that menu, compute variable, and we're going to put the target variable name is going to be respect for precedent, so we're just going to call it respect. So for our variable respect for precedent, we're going to use this compute option off of the transform menu. We can type in respect in the target variable name. The first category of our six-part categories is going to be a 3. And in this one, we're going to use the option here. So I've got it already in there. Let me delete that out and show you how to create it. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the judge's opinion position. You click on the variable over to the left, click this arrow, and it brings it in. First, we need to include if the case satisfies condition. We select this option. We'll say if the judge's opinions equals a 3, which is a dissent, and the progeny action equals a 2, then we're going to code that properly. So let me close this out. So here's the target variable, respect for precedent. It is going to be equaling a 3 when the judge's opinion position was a dissent and the case, the majority, distinguished the position. So essentially what we're going to say is the strongest respect for precedent is when an individual judge goes to the effort of dissenting and writing their own opinion when the majority is refusing to apply the current landmark precedent. That is going to be the highest form of dissent. So let's click that OK. We'll get an indication here in this log. It'll say, all right, execute if judge's opinion X equals 3 and the progeny action equals 2, then respect now equals 3. Let's go out here and look in the variable. And we have a new variable respect, 3. And if we page down, we'll see that at various different points, we've got 3. Okay, good. Now, let's go back and continue coding our variables. We're going to use transform compute variable, and it'll come right back up with your target variable, but if it doesn't, enter it back in. We're going to do the next category, which is a 2. 2, we're going to change this slightly. We can just now, because these variables are already in there, we can just change it. We can say that the next highest respect for precedent is when the judge is in the majority, right? And the progeny followed the opinion. So the next one is going to be 1 and 1. We're going to click OK. It's going to ask you to change that variable. Yes, we're still recoding. And then we're going to have that come up. Let's look. And now we've got some 2s in there as well. Good. We continue this for each of the different variable values. And so the next one is going to be 1. If the judge concurred from a position that followed the landmark, that's sort of a hedging your bets. They kind of agree with the majority, but they don't quite. And so we're going to think of that as a form of moderation, not being fully on board with the application of that precedent. So we're going to say category 1 is a value of 1 is going to take place when you have a concurrence with a follow progeny. Click OK. Change existing variable is fine. And now if we go through, we've got 3s, 2s, and 1s. So let's do the other ones very quickly. Compute variable. The next one, we're going to go into negative range. So this is not respect. The respect is negative in these situations. And so we're going to continue on. It's going to be a concurrence. Again, those are kind of more moderate. But this time it's with distinguishing the position. So we're going to change that to a 2. Continue. OK. OK. Keep doing this. Negative 2 is going to be when we have a judge that's in the majority, but the progeny action is to distinguish the case. So it's going to be 1 and 2. And then the final one is going to be the opposite again. So we're going to say negative 3 is when the judge dissents from a position where the majority followed. So it's going to be 2 and 1. Oh, you know what I did there? This is what we always have to check. That needs to be a 3 and a 1. Okay. Have to be careful with these. Okay. So let's go and look at what we have now. We have a variable for each of our observations with the exception of the respect for precedent for the actual original coding for the precedent. So let's go back and look at this. So this column, if we go all the way back to the title, that's Griswold versus Connecticut. That's our landmark case, so we have no coding for that one. But for the other ones, we have it all set up. So we successfully created this 6-part ordinal scale. Okay, so after you have a variable calculated like this, it's really important to go back and cross-check, because in that last example, in the very last step, I potentially got that wrong. And so you can't just code it and go, you have to actually go back and check it. So there's some nice ways to do that, and we're going to go ahead and show you how. Click on the variable view. One nice thing about SPSS is it allows you to move the variables around quite a bit, and so you can take whole columns and move them around easily and use it to check your coding. So the first code that I'm going to move around is I'm going to just select this row, and I'm going to hold down, and I'm going to just kind of carry it down and put it in front of respect, because that was the first code that we used for respect. Okay. After that, let's do progeny action, which is this one here. So let's click on that, hold it down, and drag it down. And so now I've got this value, I've got this value, and I've got that table in the print off of the assignment, and so I can go back and I can go look at it. And so let's go back to our data view. Now I've got judge's opinion here, and I've got the progeny action, and so this is where we're at. Okay, good. Let's sort it from high to low, and then check and make sure that the variables are matching up. So let's get rid of these for the time being. We don't need those. Let's go and let's just take our respect, and we're going to sort it in descending order. All right, so it'll put our 3s at the top, 2s, 1s, and then get it in our negative values. Okay. All right, so we sorted it. Let's go back and look. All right, so here we have our highest form of respect is again with the descent to a distinguishing position. And the value seems to be coded properly all the way down. Let's just keep going. The next value is 2. That is a majority vote for a follow position. So that seems to be fine. Not many ones here, but we do have a couple where there are concurrences to a one position, which is a follow position. Then we get into the negative values. Those are concurrences to distinguishing positions. And we get a few of those. Negative 2's will all look good here. Let me go back to the very top here. A lot of distinguishing events. So let me go back up here. Again, we have a judges in the majority for a distinguish, so that seems to be fine. Excuse me. And then let's check our final category down here, which is 3's. And then the least respect is when you dissent from a follow position, and we've got a number of those there, and then that's the original landmark. So it looks like, all things equal, we recorded it correctly. Okay, so we have our 6-point ordinal scale of respect for precedent created, and we've cross-checked it against the data coding, and so everything looks fine there. The next thing we want to do is create just a simple dichotomous measure, right? So when you're working with these things, you often want to look at them in kind of different ranges or different forms of dependent variables. So we are going to create that 6-part ordinal ranking, but we're also just going to create a dichotomous variable. The reason I did the ordinal one first is because it makes the dichotomous one a lot easier to create. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use this respect column to just create a quick dichotomous variable. So let's do that. Start with transform, compute. We're going to call this follow. And we're going to say follow precedent equals 1 when respect equals 1 or respect equals 2 or respect equals, gotta make sure I go back there and put that equal sign in there, 3. Alright, so we can just say, okay, so if it's a positive value on our scale, then we're going to say that that was a following precedent. Alright, so let's click continue, we'll go through, we'll hit OK, and everything will be good. Go back and let's transform and compute the variable. We're going to say follow equals 0. That means we didn't follow. If respect equals, let's put a negative value in front of it. One of those, negative 1, negative 2, and negative 3. Let's continue there. We'll hit OK. Okay. Let's go take a quick look. We had this sorted in a way. So as we go from 3 down to 1, 2, and 1. Still cannot get this Apple cursor where you roll up to go down. It's always just strange to me. But as we go down here for a while, it switches to 0 there. And throughout. Okay, so that's fine. So we're good. We've got our variables coded. Let's go and complete our labels. So respect for variance, we're going to do this one first. Let's just say 3. And we're going to say dissent dash distinguish. 2 is going to be majority dash follow. A 1 is going to be a concur with follow. Negative 1 is going to be a concur with a distinguished position. A negative 2 is going to be majority distinguish. And -3 is going to be a descent from a follow decision. So there we go, from least to greatest. Got that one done. Here we'll just make 1 will simply be follow. 0 will be okay.